take any self-doubt out of your head. That's the worst thing you can do. You want to imagine yourself lifting that weight before you've even lifted it. So I'm 30 years old, and I've been competing in powerlifting for about 5 years now in the 82.5 kilo class. I've always been into fitness and strength training and bodybuilding. I've never actually competed in anything strength related before. I always wanted to be strong. I was in the Marines, so I obviously had to get to a decent level of fitness for that. And then in a gym back home, I actually spotted a bloke who I knew was in the Marines, and he was lifting these big weights, and he sort of got me into it. From there, my fitness just sort of shifted from your more cardiovascular military fitness to powerlifting. Broke the British total record, I think that was August 2014, at 682.5 kilos in the 82.5 kilo class. My inspiration comes from probably the big name lifters in powerlifting, and seeing people, you know, that their body weight's quite low and they're lifting sort of ridiculous amounts of weight. What I found works for me works quite well with my sort of family life and work life as well, because I'll only train 3 times a week. I'd love to be in the gym every single day, but obviously that's where a bit of restraint and self-discipline comes in. To try training more often, more frequently, but for me it just doesn't work. Monday I'll train squats, Wednesday bench press, and Friday deadlifts. Just mega basic. Powerlifting is because you're training in such high percentages of your 1 rep max, you need that extra rest in between sets. If I'm only training 3 times a week and I'm only hitting each lift once a week, I've got a whole week of decent rest. I usually follow it's called the Wendler 531. With my job, I could never really commit to like a 12-week program because I never know where I'm going to be next week or the week after. So the Wendler 531 is only a 4-week cycle, so it's quite handy. And that'll just work off your percentages, but you're always working in between at 80 and 95%. You know, I'm always willing to try new things. It's all about trying to shock the body and sort of trick the body into growing and getting stronger and adapting to new things. But if I'm quite close to a competition, I'll stick to what I know works. I think strength training, no matter what sport you're doing, you'll always sort of plateau, and it's more of a long game than a short game. Be persistent and consistent. Just keep on going, and eventually you will get stronger. In powerlifting, it's not as strict as, say, bodybuilding. As long as I'm getting in an adequate amount of protein and I won't be stuffing my face with donuts and crisps all day every day. But I've never been like that, so it's never been a problem for me. I can survive on a pretty boring basic diet. I'm usually about 85 kilos until about 2 weeks out of a competition. I usually do a ketogenic diet, so it's basically just a high fat, moderate protein and low carb diet. And it just gets your body into a state called ketosis, where you actually start burning your fat as an energy source, and that just brings my weight down to competition weight, and luckily I don't lose any strength that way as well. I like to have at least sort of 2 meals prior to training, so which will usually just be breakfast, like a big bowl of porridge, and then lunch will be like eggs on toast. Just before I train, I'll probably take a pre-workout drink and usually a chocolate bar, just for that little bit of extra energy. I'm not a heavy supplement user, but I will take sort of like a multivitamin, post-workout protein, creatine, branched chain amino acids. Sleep's definitely, it's probably up there with diet. You don't grow in the gym, you grow out of it. Ideally, I'd like to get at least 8 hours every night, because I've got the baby now. An afternoon nap would be amazing. Being in the Marines, I'm always travelling about, and I suppose that's where training 3 times a week comes in handy. Some weeks I might be working in South Wales or Scotland or other side of England, and I'll have to sort of research where I'm going and find out if that area has powerlifting friendly gym where I can actually train at for the week. When I first started, I was sort of infantry, general duties. You have to be very cardiovascularly fit to do those roles, and I did that for about 4 years. And then when I discovered powerlifting, I realised I couldn't do the both. So I'd already done the infantry side of the Marines, so I decided to go for chef in the Marines. Basically the chef afforded me to be able to do powerlifting, because you get left to your own devices a bit more. I've only ever had one really powerlifting related injury, and that was like a shoulder impingement, and that was basically just from overtraining. I was out in Norway at the time with the Marines for a couple of months. I had so much spare time. I was training sort of 6 days a week, having 1 day off, hitting it hard every single time. I remember just doing sort of shoulder press and I just felt my shoulder go. I just sort of backed off from everything for about 6 months, and then sort of came back into it and started off sort of cautious. With my bench press, I was just altering my technique to sort of take my shoulder out of the movement, which so far has worked pretty well. I never want to be training above 95% in the gym, because there's no point. You want to be pushing yourself up to about 2 reps. If you go to a 1 rep max, technique, a lot of the time it goes out the window and you're not really training, you're sort of just testing. You know, you want to leave that, you're testing to competitions. You're not training to lift 1 rep in the gym. My first full power competition, I think I weighed about 74 kilos or maybe just under, so I was in the 75 kilo class and I came away with a 550 total. I'm now in the 82.5 kilo class, so it's 7.5 kilos difference, and my best total is 682.5. 6 weeks out, I'll go up to a 5 rep max on each of the 3 lifts, and then as the weeks come closer, the reps go down. So I'd go up to a 4 rep max, and then a 3 rep max, and then a 2 rep max, which would usually be my opening lift. About 10 days out from the competition, I'll do my last deadlift session. So I'll have 10 days rest from deadlift, about 8 days rest from squat, and then about 5 days rest for bench. It's all about sort of timing it basically, so you keep your strength, but you don't lose that fitness at the same time. Picking your lifts right is quite difficult. You got to sort of take your ego out of it and remind yourself that like your opening lifts aren't, you know, you've got nothing to prove with those, but then at the same time you want to still remain competitive. You want your opening lift to be a lift that you could hit on any given day, even if you've had, you know, a few hours sleep, you've not eaten much, you know, every single day of the week you could hit that lift. The right mental attitude probably makes 5-10% difference. You're just trying to sort of almost get in the zone. I always tend to think of my nearest and dearest, like family members, and, you know, trying to do it for them rather than myself. I'll rarely go like 9 lifts out of 9 lifts. My 3rd lift, it'll always be a sort of a lift which is possible, but only on a perfect day. If I'm 100%, if everything's going right, then that 3rd lift I know I'm capable of. But yeah, a lot of the times, just like any sport really, failure's just part of the progression. I get those days all the time when you've had a hard day at work, not much sleep, don't feel like training, but then if you've got that competition, you've got something to aim for, so you have to drag yourself to the gym, and then you know, sometimes those days will be your best training days. You've definitely got to be able to sort of tap into that mental strength. A lot is physical strength, but you've got to sort of push yourself. If you give enough effort and dedication to something, you pretty much, most things are within your grasp, most things are achievable.